I want to talk for a few moments about the idea of division of labor, which, as a sociological concept, was developed by Emil Durkheim. And basically, it's a very simple sort of concept in how various tasks are divided amongst or distributed amongst society to different sectors or populations. It's an important concept for understanding the structure of society, but it's very simple in its in essence. Like, for instance, if you have at home, when you're having a meal, a party, or whatever, so you have three basic tasks. You have cooking, you have setting up, serving, and cleanup. So if you have three people in your household, you might divide it up that George is going to do the cooking, and Joan is going to do the setting up and serving, and Harry will be doing the cleanup. And it's a division of labor, okay? And this type of division of labor can actually bring people together, and work as an organic whole. And maybe in a household you'll switch around in the division of labor, so it might not be a set division of labor, because basically everybody can do the same jobs, unless of course the person who cooks is the person who cooks because he knows how to cook. Let's move it up one level in a restaurant, for instance, or a small restaurant, where you'll have people, the waiters and the wait staff, but you have the chef and his staff, the waiters and the wait staff, and you have the cleanup crew, whoever that is. There's a division of labor. As things get bigger, it's going to be more separating and more status driven and role driven, as we spoke in the previous session. Let's move it up one step further in a food processing plant. So you have a division for people who are bringing in the food, and the people who are doing one area of cooking, and the people who are doing the packaging, and the people who are shipping it out. And you see the division gets a little bit more stratified and less connection to the next person. But in reality, of course, in one of these things, if you need to move from one area of the company to the other, it's not really too difficult. And everybody seems to know that, you know what, we're pulling together to make a product and keep this company going. But if you're thinking of on a larger scale, how the division is, let's say we're producing banana chips. Somebody has to grow the bananas, and the bananas might be coming from Honduras or wherever they grow. But they also have to bring in the particular type of sugar, which is imported from another place. And somebody is cutting down the sugar cane, and somebody is boiling the sugar cane before it gets to there. And so on and so forth. You can see that you need certain different people to do certain parts of the labor in order for you to go to the store, right? And after it's all produced, it's sent and shipped by whatever it is, by a shipping company. And from the shipping company, it will go to the central distributing house for Walmart, for instance, and Walmart is then going to send it out to your local Walmart store, where you have, in order for you to buy it, you've got all that staff at Walmart until you actually pick it up from the shelf, and from that shelf you have to pay the cashier and walk out, and there you have it. So you've seen that there's quite a lot of steps that's necessary for that particular banana chip which you're going to eat. How did it get to you? There's been a huge amount of division of labor. So that's the idea we have now. The real question is that we're going to look at two different ways of looking at this. The functionalist perspective, which was like from Durkheim, who I said previously originated this concept, And then, of course, we'll do another aside from the conflict perspective. And from the functionalist perspective, again, it's not necessarily difficult to understand, because it seems like a good idea to get a banana chip when you want to eat one. And in order for that to happen, you need some sort of division of labor. You cannot get it all done unless there is some sort of way of getting each particular part of the process completed. And so you might have a specialist in a particular type of process. For instance, if you're going to have an iPod, for instance, if you have a telephone, if you don't have a specialist in programming that program that goes in there, what's it going to help if you have somebody who just has a specialist in producing the cases or the microchips, or et cetera, et cetera. There are many, many, many different types of parts which need to be included in the production. So in any of our products, this is obvious, we have to have all these different parts, and it will work together as a functional whole. Now, Durkheim would say that this is a natural evolutionary trend of societies, that it grew from the simple society to the more complex society, and now we have this type of interdependency between the different types of labor, different types of portions of the society. And so, of course, but when you think about it, there is, of course, obvious advantages to some of this. Obvious advantages meaning manifest functions that we want it to happen, so that, in other words, if we need to get clothing sewn, and we can get this done in Southeast Asia for a cheaper price, then we will be able to go and give some work to the people of Southeast Asia, and they will get some income while we will get our clothes, and that's a manifest function. On the other hand, there's obvious dysfunctions, obvious problems. So these are manifest dysfunctions in the idea that, well, we used to have a great textile industry in Paterson, New Jersey, and it no longer exists. So now Paterson, which used to be a very middle class and upper middle class community, is now down on the lower class side of society. So there's been a manifest dysfunction when we move jobs outside of the country. This is some of the discussion which happens when we had trade, we make international trade treaties such as NAFTA, etc. And of course there are unexpected benefits, which would be the latent functions, right? We didn't know what was going to happen. And of course, unexpected problems, which we could look at afterwards, as in the latent dysfunctions. So, but what we need to also think is that even though that this has an important part to this, there could be various levels of problems which mess up the possibility of this organic whole working, and instead of bringing a community together, it can wind up splitting the community apart. Like, for instance, if there's an industrial crisis of some sort, a new technology will mess up how these pieces are functioning together. When we got CDs, what happens in the cassette factories, a new type of things. Also, if there's epidemics or wars, even a war not necessarily in the homeland, but for instance in World War II, when the United States needed to produce arms, all the metal was taken out of many other industries and put into the aircraft and the war effort. So all of those factors, all those parts of labor fell apart. There could be strikes, worker strikes, which shut down parts of a part of an industry, and that will have a cascading effect on other areas because of the division of labor. So, for instance, when automobile factory closes down because of a strike, then the glass factories that are producing the windshields, they lose their they lose work, and so it could have a cascading effect. The job specialization, instead of sometimes bringing people together, it brings people apart, because if it's a large company, then this part of the company has no connection to this part of the company, and there could be actually even conflict between them. Another possibility of this division of labor that can break apart society is that sometimes societies will get crystallized into specific types of people doing specific types of jobs, and will be what we call a forced division of labor. In that way, it would be such things as only women do certain jobs. I mean, at one point, men were truck drivers and senators when there were no women in there. Now we can have both. But in many parts of the world, this is not like that. So there is a separation. Women being nurses and social workers. Today we have both. But in some parts of the world, that wouldn't happen. And of course, there is a problem of inefficient or development of a workforce, which could cause a separation in the societies, and especially when you have inefficient use of education. So certain sectors of society do not actually get to use all of the society itself doesn't get a chance to use all of its resources, and people wind up alienated and disconnected. Now, I've run out of time for this portion. I'll make a separate video to talk a little bit about the conflict theory and the division of labor.